On March 28, 1987, the first Disney store opened at the Glendale Galleria in Glendale, California. It was the first of what would come to be hundreds of Disney stores located throughout the world. Heavily themed around Disney's popular characters and full of unique exclusive merchandise, a trip to the Disney store was an experience by design. In 1987, the term retailtainment had yet to be coined, but it accurately described the unique business model Disney chose for their retail locations. As I said before, Disney stores were experiences, not only for parents, but for their kids. The stores featured multiple screens throughout, showcasing upcoming Disney projects, behind-the-scenes features, and sing-alongs. Employees were also referred to as cast members, just like at Disney's theme parks. The centerpiece of the stores was a multi-tiered pyramid of plush, and many locations had very rudimentary animatronic figures lining the tops of the shelves. Disney's ultimate goal was to bring curated Disney experiences to people who were unable to visit the theme parks. While the 90s was littered with Disney's various attempts at regional entertainment, Disney Quest, Club Disney, the Disney store would prove to be the only one that managed to become profitable. The entire venture, especially in the 80s when Disney had yet to recover from a slew of failed feature films, was an incredible gamble, but one that paid off. For a while, at least. Warner Brothers was getting ready for a major comeback in the 90s. As they started planning their own chain of retail stores in the 80s, many of their major successes weren't even on the horizon. Boldened by the success of the 1989 Batman live-action film and a string of theatrical Looney Tunes compilations, Warner Brothers stepped up their merchandising by introducing a catalog.
Hold it! Hold it right there! Let's see if you're really ready to watch this movie. Okay, popcorn? Check. Soft drink? Check. Warner Brothers ball cap? Aha! You can't watch a Warner Brothers movie without a Warner Brothers ball cap.
Listen, Doc, what if they ordered a Warner Brothers ball cap so they had it next time?
Well,
Here's all you have to do, folks. Just send for this. A free Warner Brothers catalog. Use it to order your Warner Brothers ball cap. And while you're at it, you can order stuff like T-shirts, posters, videos, ties. That's neckties. It's all in the catalog, which you can get free by dialing this 800 number. So when you get a chance, call...
No, they have to call now. They can't watch a movie until they order their free catalog. You're despicable.
Don't forget to call, folks.
Though the exact sales data has never been released publicly, this seemed to go well for them and led to the opening of the first Warner Brothers studio store in 1991. A little over a decade later, they would all be gone.
These days, the studios are selling their wares in trendy retail outlets.
Over the Thanksgiving Day weekend, they were experiencing crowds, the likes of which I have never seen at a retailer. It looked like the gala opening for a big Hollywood film. People were lined up around the block.
Warner Brothers wasn't the first company to try and throw their hat into the retail ring. Hanna-Barbera, home of such characters as Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones, made a bid to create their own chain of retail shops in 1990. It had been over a decade since Hanna-Barbera's last hit, and the new president of the company, former film producer David Kirshner, was gearing up to bring the company's classic IPs back into the limelight. He also worked with Universal Studios to create an opening day attraction for their new theme park in Orlando.
You're not gonna believe where I've just been. Universal Studios, Florida, where they have Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera ride. Well, that's a chase. It's not a chase that you watch, but you're in it.
This attraction was called the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera, and the first Hanna-Barbera retail store opened alongside it, serving as the ride's exit. 2 other locations for the Hanna-Barbera store would also be opened in California. The Hanna-Barbera characters still had significant brand recognition, and the attraction at Universal Studios was incredibly popular, but many of the company's attempts at catering to a new generation of kids was so far falling flat. The Hanna-Barbera studio and all of its assets were purchased in 1991 by the Turner Broadcasting System. Turner already owned the rights to the Looney Tunes library prior to the 1950s, as well as classic Popeye shorts and other cartoons from Fleischer Studios. After a long bidding war with Universal, who had seen the success of Hanna-Barbera's characters in their theme park, Turner now held the classic company's future in its hands. Armed with a massive library of old, nostalgic cartoons, Turner launched the Cartoon Network in 1992, following hot on the heels of Nickelodeon's success.
Turner has the greatest cartoons ever made.
Our collection includes the best of the Warner Brothers classics, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Porky Pig.
That's all, folks.
That's not all. There's also our old friend, Popeye.
Here's me past record, folks, which speaks for itself.
Plus all the MGM stars, Tom and Jerry, Screwy Squirrel, Barney Bear, and Droopy.
Hooray.
And since we just bought Hanna-Barbera, Turner now owns hundreds of memorable characters that are household names to families around the world.
Barney. Fred. Boo-boo.
Yogi.
Boo-boo.
Quickstraw.
Donkey.
The channel was initially populated only with the cartoon library Turner already had the rights to, but would soon utilize Hanna-Barbera's animation studios in order to create original content. Cartoon Network would allow Hanna-Barbera's characters to reach a brand new audience, but by the time the channel launched, it was already too late for the retail locations. Turner closed the 2 Hanna-Barbera stores in California, leaving only the location at Universal Studios operating. It would continue to operate until the ride's closure in 2002. However, Hanna-Barbera's characters would not stay out of malls for long.
In 1992, we added 17 new stores, providing a unique shopping and entertainment experience to people across the U.S.
By 1992, the Warner Brothers studio stores were a year into operation, working on making their mark on malls around the country. Similar to the Disney Store, Warner Brothers studio stores were heavily themed and decorated with large, colorful statues of Looney Tunes and various characters from DC Comics' superhero roster. Some select 2-story locations, such as the one on 5th Avenue in New York City, had a glass elevator with Superman below it, seemingly pushing the elevator cart upwards. Many locations also contain galleries with pricey collectibles and original animation cells for purchase, right alongside the store's own line of Beanie Baby-like plush and other children's toys. The focal point for each store, similar to the Disney Store, was a large screen showing music videos, animated shorts, and commercials for upcoming movies. Below that was a small children's play area modeled after Marvin the Martian's spaceship. Children could crawl around inside the tube-like structure and press a series of interactive buttons while watching Marvin the Martian cartoons on their own small screen.
Our typical sign is customer's exit is that's all, folks. And in this store, it's Thaddeus Venetius Focus, which I'm sure my Latin teacher would kill me for, but a lot of people get the joke.
The 90s was the decade for the underdog. This was the decade where Sonic the Hedgehog was running circles around Nintendo, where weird, creator-controlled cartoons on Nickelodeon were walking all over those found on Saturday mornings, and where the Looney Tunes were poised to work their way back into popular culture, their unbridled, unchanged brand of chaotic slapstick comedy resonating with current tastes. Warner Brothers was more willing to take risks with the Looney Tunes. They had to take risks in order to find relevance in a new era. Over the years, Disney had become terrified of misusing Mickey Mouse, trying to keep his image as wholesome and squeaky clean as possible. Warner Brothers, after some reluctance, allowed a new, hip, more modern version of Bugs Bunny to appear in an ad featuring Michael Jordan. The ad, showcasing Air Jordans, was an immense hit, and Warner Brothers saw an opportunity to see some of the limelight from Disney once again. They not only greenlit more ads, but got to work on a brand new movie, Space Jam. During the production of Space Jam, Time Warner, the parent company of Warner Brothers, and the Turner Broadcasting System merged together. This merger not only allowed Warner Brothers access to the pre-1950s library of animated content, but it gave them the rights to the entire roster of Hanna-Barbera characters. These characters were quickly integrated into the studio stores, giving them the widespread merchandising prominence that Hanna-Barbera had hoped to achieve 5 years earlier with their own retail locations. Space Jam released in 1996 to massive success, pushing Warner Brothers to continue producing their own animated films as the Disney Renaissance began to wane. They also began airing a Saturday morning cartoon block on their basic cable channel starting in 1995. This, along with a massive roster of nostalgic IPs, new shows from Cartoon Network that were proving to be massive hits, and a couple of live-action classics, the Warner Brothers studio stores were packed with more unique merchandise than ever before. When Pokémon reached the US in the late 90s, Warner Brothers scooped at the licensing rights to the anime. A new line of Scooby-Doo VHS movies were introduced in 1998, and Scooby-Doo, who had been barely clinging to life all throughout the 80s and 90s, was immensely popular again. Batman the Animated Series was an incredible success, not only proving that more serious cartoons had a place in American animation, but that DC's characters could resonate with a younger audience. Backed by a powerful roster of marketable content, the Warner Brothers Studio Store thrived, proving to be successful enough to keep its head above the water despite immense competition. Both the Warner Brothers Studio Store and the Disney Store expanded rapidly throughout malls in the late 90s.
From concept to reality. From those who designed and built the stores to those who created the thousands of products sold in the stores. To those who work in our new state-of-the-art distribution center in Sun Valley. To those who work in marketing and merchandising. To those who deal with the public on a daily basis. All of you are vital to our success. You're an important part of our truly original marketing concept, offering exciting merchandise for any day of the year.
And then, things started to go wrong.
The remains of Rolling Acres in Akron, Ohio. Poster child for a recent phenomenon in America, the dead mall.
Malls in America began losing popularity, with many locations forced to close their doors. Larger big box stores were becoming more prevalent, and they were now selling their own WB and Disney merchandise, forcing the two companies to not only compete with each other, but themselves. This was followed by a string of underperforming movies for both studios. The animation division at Disney was beginning to flounder, with movies such as Hunchback of Notre Dame and Hercules not bringing in the success that they'd hoped. Warner Brothers Animation was suffering similarly, with all of its animated films following Space Jam not only underperforming, but failing to break even. Merchandise for movies such as Quest for Camelot and The Iron Giant languished on store shelves. In the wake of Space Jam's success, the Looney Tunes faded back into obscurity, their moment in the spotlight effectively over.
The merger of the #1 internet company with the #1 media company will bring together the best of both worlds.
In January of 2001, AOL and Time Warner merged. AOL, now calling the shots, had no interest in running a chain of retail stores, seeing them as an unneeded expense. The market was becoming volatile, with Disney announcing they would be closing many Disney Store locations. Sensing that the writing was on the wall, AOL put the chain up for sale and waited for a buyer, while closing some of the larger, more prominent locations, including the one on Fifth Avenue in New York. As the summer arrived with no buyer in sight, AOL announced in July of 2001 that they would be closing the remaining 85 stores in the United States. Liquidation of many locations began soon after. On September 11, 2001, the Warner Brothers studio store located inside the World Trade Center was destroyed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Many remaining statues and merchandise were seized and held in a hangar with other salvaged items for over a decade until they were finally released to the public in 2015, with the caveat that every item that was claimed must be displayed publicly. A couple items, including character t-shirts and Brandon hangers, were claimed by Warner Brothers, while other merchandise was given to outsiders, such as a Marvin the Martian clock intended to be displayed in a 9/11 memorial at a Florida high school. Warner Brothers studio stores continued to close, with the Times Square location shuttering its doors in October. All of the remaining locations were closed by December 31st, 2001. The Warner Brothers studio store left a lasting impression on me. My parents' house is decorated in salt and pepper shakers and towering glass cookie jars featuring the Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo. I bought my first comic book at the location in the Orlando airport, a Pokemon one, that I then read on the plane ride home. When I'm feeling particularly nostalgic, I'll browse eBay, looking at the merchandise that I would have purchased for myself had I been a little older. Despite how much I wish it was still around, I know that it likely would not have survived the upcoming decade. Things were about to get much worse for retail. Throughout the 2000s, Disney closed many of their Disney Store locations, attempting to restructure those that were left in order to cater to more modern tastes and compete with online shopping. But their animated movies continued to do poorly at the box office, and their store shelves were crammed with merchandise for new properties that people didn't enjoy. While the Disney Store is still around today, it's a shadow of its former self. The novelty is long worn off, and with the onset of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, the chain's future is very uncertain. Disney merchandise can easily be purchased online or at retail stores like Target and Walmart. There is very little reason for specialized mall retail in 2020. But that's not to say that the Warner Brothers studio store is gone for good. Locations outside of the US continued to operate throughout the 2000s, and while many of them have now closed, several new locations were opened in China in 2004, 2006, and 2016. There is still a location in the United States as part of the Warner Brothers Backlot Tour in Burbank, and Warner Brothers recently announced that they would be opening a Harry Potter flagship store in New York. Things come and they go, but the Warner Brothers studio store was something special. A product of its time riding on the coattails of a competitor's success. The underdog that managed to compete with Disney and didn't necessarily fail. A time capsule of unbridled optimism. And hey, at least they tried.